Hello and welcome to Stampscape 101. I'm going to do a half-page scene. Cardstock, little splotches on it, but it shouldn't really matter. And the way the area gets covered up anyways. With a lot of ink, I'm not worried about these little spots on here, so might as well use it. This is an old stamp of mine from Marks of Distinction. What a great name for a stamp company, huh? This one is dated 1991. I don't know if they're still around or not, but I haven't seen them in quite some time, but always kind of shocking to, see a date like that and realize how long 1991, how long ago 1991 really was. I haven't used this stamp in, I don't know, it might be 15 years, I would say. I don't know. It's something like that. Maybe not that long. But anyways, I was testing it. The rubber seems absolutely fine. There's a lot of different, different incarnations of stamps these days. I always recommend going with natural rubber when possible. There's a lot of other companies that use, like clear poly materials with some really great designs, but I just kind of worry about the longevity of them sometimes, if that's important to you. But, this is the copyright on here is 1991. I don't know if that's when I bought it, but might have been more around like 94 or something, but I don't know. The rubber on here is perfectly supple still, and the natural ingredients really kind of lend themselves to pretty I don't know, pretty long lifespan. Okay, that was the angel. I don't know what code it was, but this is the Meadow stamp, Meadow large. Just stamp it in black, and I'm going to go through here and just for a slight variation in black. I don't know if this green is going to show up at all, by the time make the impression, but it'll give it a slight greenish tinge, to the impression as opposed to just straight pad black. The pad that I'm using is Marvy black, the number 1 as far as their numbering convention goes. I'm blotting off some of the bottom part of this so I don't get a too harsh of a line showing. And let's go about, let's stamp it about like so. As always, okay, I didn't press hard enough here. Okay, so you can see what you get right there. I was just about to say press hard enough, and here I didn't. Okay, let's see, where's that black? Okay, I said I was going to get into some kind of troubleshooting videos at some point in time. And I don't know, this one isn't dedicated to that, but I might as well do some troubleshooting right here. Okay. What I've done is I've just inked up a small area right here, alright, and I'm just going to stamp it right on in there. Okay, one of the things about scenic stamping is that you can certainly use certain portions for, just isolated impressions, and it shouldn't really matter in the end result. Okay. So that kind of fills in there, and of course we have this area out here, and okay. green. This is a Marvy green brush marker, by the way. The color is actually called green. You know, it's just their basic, whatever, default green, I guess. I think its code is number 4. Okay. And overlap with the previous impression a little bit. Okay, that's a better impression. I gave more pressure in there this time. And anyway, you have a seamless, full meadow down there with some pine trees, and I'm going to use this stamp right here. It's the tall rock. It's kind of a version of a kind of a High Sierras type of rock. I'm going to blot off some of the bottom portion of this, so as it transitions into these trees, the rock area down here won't kind of obscure the nice silhouette of the tree line. Okay. So you see it kind of transitions down there into, I guess what it would be represent as a little bit of fog maybe down here. I'm going to use the stamp again for the other side of the scene. Right over here, it's going to create kind of a valley. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, let me add some more imagery down below here, more textures. This is called pond, and it becomes a pond if you color that in, that area, these open spaces. You know, accordingly. You know, they can either be reflections or you can do it with color, you know, blue or something like that. But it can also just be, you know, patchy grass and dirt kind of laid around down there. Okay. Some more textures like so. Okay. It's kind of the foundation. And let's get into kind of a cloud formation here. This is the cloud Cumulus, and I'm stamping it in the salvia blue, which is the light blue. Now this scene is going to get, you know, a little bit, well, quite a bit darker, the way I've kind of planned it out. So I'm not going to mask the angel off. I'm going to just stamp right over her because I have plans for that area in there in terms of tone, or at least my idea of how this scene might come out. She's going to be coming out of a kind of a circling cluster of light, and I am stamping it over these rocks right here, but I'm not worried about it too much. I'm stamping it in a light enough color, okay? I don't need to worry about that, and plus it's going to be kind of that tonality anyway in the scene, so and if it bothers you, you know, where you're getting a little bit of, you know, some of that cloud texture in the wings, then you could certainly mask her off. But for my use, I just don't feel I need to do that. Okay. Alright, now I'll be using some other imagery on here, but for right now, you know, the foundation is certainly set as far as the composition goes. Let's begin with the application of tone. This is always a good color to start off with. The Adirondack Lights range from Ranger is excellent because they're very light, so you don't have a huge, you know, dedicated value to a certain color, and they're very slippery, so when I apply them onto the scene, they blend beautifully. I can pull my color in and not get these set, harsh, you know, shapes, because the color will move for me. It doesn't absorb in the page, you know, so quickly that you're left with, you know, kind of harsh, unintentional marks. Okay, you want a smooth application, of course, and that's what you'll get with a kind of a thicker ink. And again, this one's very light, so it's the ideal choice. It's, you know, both in terms of texture and value. Okay, thick and light, good choices. If you don't have both of those characteristics in ink, if you're going to choose one or the other, I would probably go with the, you know, thicker one. If you don't have, you know, light colored ones, because the thicker inks again will, you know, you can move them around a little bit, and it kind of lubricates the page a little bit. Okay, all right. Now, as I do this, I can feel and I can see that not all of my black imagery on the page was dry, so I'm getting this streaking of color, like around those wings and stuff. Well, I don't know, that poses a little bit of a problem in some areas if I want it to remain nice and light, but you know, in this case I'm not worried about it too much. I'd prefer it wasn't doing that. But, you know, as they say, it is what it is, and I'll just work with it. Okay, it's kind of smearing my trees down here as well. Now normally, I mean, if that's happening, I mean, if I'm not working on a video like this, I just kind of let it dry a little bit, and I wouldn't run into that problem. And we're not talking about drying too long, we're just talking about like 5 minutes, but I don't want to wait, so I'm just going to keep doing this. And if it gets a little bit darker in some areas, then it just means that then that's, you know, that's how dark that area will become instead. Okay. Alright. Now I'm really working with gray here because of the, all that black in that tight detail area. Tighter the detail, that means there's dots are being more condensed and there's more ink being held in those areas. Okay, now that is the aqua blue from the Adirondack Lights range, and now I'm going on with the salvia blue. Okay. Adding that in. As you can can see it's kind of more perimeter oriented. I'm going around the outside edge. I'm leaving some lighter areas in the middle here. Yeah, in this case, as far as the composition goes, I want the angel to be the light, to be emanating from kind of behind her, or from the angel herself. Actually, I made her too dark, so. But so it'll be coming out from that space in the sky. Alright. Adding some shadows down here into the rock area. Okay. One of my secrets to lighting. Dark, light, and if it's the sky, it's typically the light source. And I divide the light area in the middle of the scene by having some darker areas so that it goes from not just light in the middle, but it kind of breaks up the light this way, you see? So light is hitting here and here now. So it's that oscillation of light and dark, and I think that kind of creates a dialogue of light source and reflected light. It kind of gives the scene a little bit, it breaks up the scene a little bit more in terms of value. And I think that makes for kind of a more interesting lighting scheme for your scene. So you don't have to get, okay, just had to delete some pictures off my camera. I forgot to do that before. But what I was getting at was I was saying you could direct your lighting certainly around the objects within a scene, but and I do that, but for the most part I think I'm generally working areas, and there's a little bit of variation between scene to scene, but there's usually kind of a light, source, and it's divided up again, something like that. But let me just go into a couple scenes that I just did talking about that. You have an area of light, it's divided up between a shadow, another area of light, shadow, or darkness, and light down here. So you can really see where those areas are going to be divided up. Here's light, dark, dark. And there's little patches of light. This is where I'm working around specific objects, but for the most part, light, and this one's a little bit different. There's light right here, but again, I divide it up like that. I don't just come down the whole thing, and then this area stands out because the area around it's darker. So just divide up the space a little bit, and it's really easy to do. And you certainly don't have to, do that, but it's an easy way to do lighting in a scene. Just working that convention, and I think it's really effective. It could be effective for a large percentage of scenic types of compositions. Okay. Salvia blue. It looks okay right now to me, this grayish blue tinge, but it's lacking some kind of verve, for lack of a better word. It's lacking some intensity for me. So that's where some of these brighter colors come in. I don't want everything super intense though, and bright, okay? Intensity is another property of color, okay? With value, you're talking about light and dark. With intensity, you're talking about bright and dull. Okay, not dull in terms of interest, but just not, so hot and vibrant. And sometimes it's good to have kind of both. You want kind of a range in all of your different aspects of color. Potentially, okay, not for everything, but like I said, for a large percentage of things that we do, having some areas that are, you know, that have a nice range in terms of the scale, you know, bright and dull, dark and light, you can really kind of increase the visual interest. I keep saying that, but nevertheless, that's kind of the idea here. You know, you want to have people enjoy the work on you know, several different levels. It could be for the lighting, it could be for the content, you know, the mood, certainly. And I think all these different things can kind of play into it. And there's certainly some easy conventions that you can do to make that so, you know, and it's just simply changing or adding, you know, possibly another CAD color into the mix that you're working with. Okay, this was number 10 blue, and it's called Light Blue from Marvy, and it's really quite a super bright color, and I use it all the time. For my blue tones, a lot of times you know, in the end result, it might not even look as though there's very much of it used because it's covered in darker blues, like this one's blue. Okay, ooh, that one's really dark. Okay, did you see that? Adding it down, it's very harsh, but because I used that, the Adirondack Lights Aqua, it really spreads for me, and it gives me time to work with it. I don't need to worry about, you know, leaving really harsh shapes that are not workable. So add, you know, plenty of it, and if you find that your colors are kind of catching and leaving harsh marks, go back and add, you know, some of those thicker inks right over the top of your darker ones. You won't be able to, you're not going to be lightening up the scene, but you're just going to be kind of re-lubricating or coating the paper more, and then go back to your darker tones, and your darker tones should be much easier to manipulate and to add in a nice smooth motion with whatever applicators you happen to be working with, if you want that blended look. Okay. Darkening my corners, closing off the composition by making the perimeter darker. What I'm going for in this scene is I want it to be, you know, as far as the composition, I want it to be fairly quiet and peaceful, you know, time of night, and kind of evocative of, you know, a certain mood. Those big mountains in the background, those big pillars look like almost like they're kind of compositional columns, and they contrast nicely against the soft, billowy clouds, you know, by having something kind of, you know, kind of stationary and solid in mass. Okay, let's go and let's take a look here and evaluate a little bit. I'm trying to think of some other tones to bring in here, possibly a different hue to introduce. kind of leaning towards, a little bit of green, or maybe just some warmth in the these areas where I've retained, or I've just left, a lot of the white of the page. Okay, I wanted to have some options by the time I got to this point. I didn't want to make it all, strictly blue, because I can add some warm tones in the clouds too if I got to this point, and I thought, I think I could use that. I could still add like an orangish or peachish tinge of like a peach Bellini Adirondack light, and it'll read as that. If blue was laid down there, anything that I laid over the top, the blue would kind of, affect whatever's going on top. So if I added a green, it would look blue-green, or if I added a pink, it would look purple. So if you retain some of these, the white of the page underneath, then you can get pure versions of whatever you kind of lay down there still. Okay, this is black, and I'm doing the four corners, and it contains the composition nicely, especially with so many bold shapes also stamped in black. Okay. Okay, now I stamped the clouds out in salvia blue. It was the lightest blue pad that I used for. I used aqua, but that wasn't the pad form. I used, I just used the re-inker of that. So that being said, okay, that blue cloud right there is really light, right? But where I've laid down the colors underneath it, or over the top of it, you can't really see the cloud shape anymore, right? So what I do is I can take a darker color. I think I'm going to have to go all the way to black because it's really got dark over here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe off the top of this. I see the top of it because when I'm stamping this, I'm stamping it kind of upside down like that. And I don't want this harsh edge, okay? So I'm going to come in here like so, and where I wiped it off here, it should transition nicely and blend in with the areas underneath, okay? So let me do a few of these. Okay. It's probably going to take about 3 or 4 impressions. Okay, and let's see if this reads right here, so you can kind of see that cloud formation out there now, because I stamped it in black. Alright, same thing around in here. Alright, so you can always reintroduce imagery if it's kind of disappeared. Okay, now just working in scale. Actually, I'm going to add this in the foreground here to kind of frame things off in the foreground, but let's get a little color, extra color on our figure here. And I see this as representative of moonlight, so yeah. The colors kind of fade out and become cool, and I'm going to go into some of the drapery on this figure. Okay. This is a really light alcohol ink pen. This one happens to be the Le Plume permanent marker. Okay, I'm going to give her a little bit of a flesh tone, just to, you know, she stands out from the background slightly with a little bit of a warm tone. I'll add that like so. Now, why don't we give her a little bit of a variation? This is kind of a pink here, just to make her stand out from the background a little bit. Okay. How about a slight tinge of some green down below? Green, of course, is blue, a little bit of yellow in it, so it's going to warm it up slightly. Okay. You see how it's kind of warming it up down there? I think it's more, I don't know, kind of inviting and accessible, maybe. I'm talking about from an emotional, visually emotional standpoint. Okay. And this was the pale green. You know, I want to start off with a kind of a light green if I'm going to add green to it. I don't want to do it too dark or, you know, something super bright like this. Okay, it would just potentially stand out too much. And I mean, you could build up to it or something like that if you know, you might want to do that. But for me, I'd rather have control, and if I like it, then I go more. You know, this is the. Let's see. Need a clean tip right here because I'm changing kind of color hue right here from green to peach Bellini. Okay, let's add a slight bit of that. It kind of relates to her skin tone slightly. I'll add a little bit in here, like there's some warmth down here, okay? Alright. Okay. Let's go for some foreground, okay? This is the Pines and Rocks stamp, and I'm stamping it out in black. Kind of stamping it off my page, okay? It's coming from the, you know, the bottom up into the scene. Okay, at this point in time, I want to make sure that I get all the ink to transfer, so you can see as I'm standing up, you know, and letting gravity work for me. I don't have to press super hard, but press evenly. To get that impression right. Okay. At this point in time, the page is fairly wet, you know, especially in my corners where I add a lot of ink. So I hold this down and I let the ink transfer onto the scene a little bit more, okay? Then, say with the first impression, you know, where I'm just going on, you know, bare cardstock, bare dry cardstock, okay? Here on this side, nice light even pressure. I don't know, maybe it's not light pressure, maybe it's kind of medium pressure because it's a large stamp. Okay, So you notice I'm not just holding it like this and pressing, pressing, pressing. I want to get above my image, so I'm kind of pressing down on those certain areas like that. And letting it transfer again. Let some of the ink transfer on the card. Okay, so we have some foreground here. Like that. See how it kind of, I'm leaving an opening right in here too for the viewer's eye to enter. Alright. Let's get a little bit of texture here. I have this little suddenly forgot what the name of the stamp is called. It's these little rocks. Tiny rocks, I think. Okay. I tend to love texture, so sometimes I like adding things like this. Okay, so these little rocks, I've probably done about 7 impressions of it or so. Okay. And let's increase the textural range and variation of shape. And, I mean, none of these are absolutely necessary. I mean, nothing was really necessary, but this is just adding a little bit more texture, and foreground it's putting something, say, even closer to me, you know, than the trees. This is called, my mind's a blank today. Winter Twigs or something like that. All this will be in the notes section. Okay, I really like actually how that looks. It looks like it can kind of be like leafless versions of the pine or something like that. Okay. Alright. Let's get our star in the scene. This is a little bear stamp. It's just called Bear. And I've left the stage for him. Blank. I've left the stage with the spotlight on. I'm wiping the feet. If you've seen in other videos, I like, if I'm putting animals in the scene, if they're walking in grass, I kind of wipe off the feet a little bit so that it looks like they're kind of in the grass. And I'll put him right here, right in the spotlight. Okay. All right, let's liven this up a little bit. Okay. Let's see here. Let's create more of a. Let's do a soft light around the our figure in the sky. These Q-tips of mine are really. They're really tightly wound, okay, so I need to loosen them up a little bit. Okay. There's some of these cotton swabs. They're not really cotton. They're almost like acrylic or something. don't use those ones. Those ones are, well, I don't know. I think they're rather useless for this application of them. Alright. This is my color box. Frost White. Pigment ink. Okay, let's have some of that light coming in. This pad, again, I used it in my last video. It's almost too new. I think I like it used better where it's kind of dry. You know, I'm not going to just remove ink from it, but yeah, I have to use a little bit more touch. I can dab off more too, but okay. See, I'm kind of diffusing some of the form around her. You know, I always say this, but anytime we make our impressions, you know, we want really crisp, clear impressions, okay? And, you know, if we have kind of areas that don't stamp out quite as much, we certainly, you know, don't want it, you know, to happen unintentionally. Now this is a case where if I kind of thought about it, you know, before I stamped her out, I could have, you know, blotted off some of the area around, you know, these areas here, but, you know, so that it doesn't stamp out so dark. So in a sense, you can kind of get a similar effect that's inherent in the impression instead of going back in, you know, knocking out some of the impression with the, you know, kind of an additive technique like this, you know, we're adding, you know, pigment ink on top of it. But on the other hand, this, you know, doing it this way, there's a lot of control over it. You can kind of decide how much diffusion of form you want, you know, in terms of kind of lightening up, you know, the area, you know, some of her form. Okay. So anyways, you can see, you know, kind of we have her underlit here and whatnot. Okay, let's do the same thing on some clouds. Let's, you know, let's put a little bit of light on these mountains here. I wouldn't put light on the mountains over in these darker areas because it would look strange, but the fact that that light billowy cloud is right next to this area, you know, I can go on in there and, you know, I think it looks, you know, pretty good on that, on those mountain rock forms. Kind of oscillate it, don't do it over the entire thing, you know, leave areas kind of crisp, and some areas, you know, that are a little bit more diffused. And I think that kind of looks better. Sometimes it's, you know, it's really easy to add too much of this ink. But don't worry, I mean, it's not a precarious exercise. I mean, if you get too much down there, just wipe it off. You know, you can't do this with fast-drying pigment ink, okay? I mean, you can in certain areas, but if you want it really soft like this and, you know, kind of being able to manipulate it, the faster-drying ones are, you know, like the ones that are kind of known to dry very fast on glossy cardstock. You won't be able to manipulate it as much. Now sometimes when I want to get a really good buildup of, you know, kind of mist or light, sometimes if I just go with only this, you know, slower drying ink, the color box frost one, sometimes it starts building up, and if I think, oh, I want it a little bit lighter and lighter, and sometimes I keep adding and adding and adding, and then pretty soon it starts kind of removing it. So that's when I go with the faster drying ink, kind of in spots here and there. But I wouldn't do it over a vast area, unless you really have command of a, you know, the application process. And but like I said, it's a little bit more of a temperamental process that way. You know, because you just, you know, once it's down, it's down. I guess there's something to be said for that, you know, being kind of decisive, but, well, like I said, you know, for me, I don't like any unintentional types of marks. You know, if they're really obtrusive in terms of the, you know, what they look like. Okay. Let's add a little bit of that same texture down below, so we give the bottom of the scene kind of something to relate to up top in terms of the, you know, textures of a given scenic landscape. This area down here, you know, the light, maybe I can have some of this kind of fog. Oops. Maybe around the bear's feet. Okay, maybe he's walking in 2 or 3 inches of kind of fog that it's hovering above the ground. I always kind of love that look. You know, kind of when you're walking at night, and you know, there's a little layer of fog built up over a grassy field or something. I just thought that was kind of cool. Okay, a bit of a close-up here. Let me see here. Okay, you can see a little bit of that fog in there. See where she's kind of being illuminated now. You see how that's kind of effective around in these areas. She's being kind of flooded with light, you know, now. It's not just backlit, but it's almost as if the light is kind of encompassing her a little bit. Maybe not encompassing, but certainly kind of wrapping around. You know, there's more of an interaction of light. It's almost like it's kind of alive. Okay. That was our soft light. And she has her hand coming out. I kind of left it like that. Maybe I'll have, you know, a little, kind of little twinkly. Stardust or whatever she would be doing, coming down here. Do you know the wildflower, pearly everlasting little white little flowers, wildflowers in a meadow? Maybe, maybe that's what she's doing, you know. I have some areas that are kind of clustered and with this texture. I forgot I was zoomed in here. I hope that was on screen. feels like where little stars are being introduced into this bear's landscape. Okay, those are kind of representative of little flowers coming down. The trees that were on the image itself, you can see where the lighter areas are. I'm going to go in and reintroduce a bit of that form, that lighting convention. Now a lot of the rocks got fairly dark, so I don't want to add too much of this. But it should kind of reintroduce those forms in a way. It's actually hard to see them in some areas. I made it kind of dark. But you can always fake it. Alright, so there's those rocks in there. See right here, where they're light. Kind of putting a little bit of that highlighting on top. Okay, let's see. Let's make her impact a little bit more profound too. Let's have this sparkling light kind of emanating from, her presence. So maybe these little dots are coming out here, but, they're getting bigger as they become maybe closer to us. See that? Let's try to get in there a little bit more. It's kind of like adding an entirely new texture right over the top of a scene. Kind of giving everything a little bit more dimension. Things like this make a, maybe not this whole scene, but I'm saying like an angels and the clouds. You might make a kind of fun Christmas card or seasonal card. Just like in the scene a couple scenes ago where I was doing that starfish lesson, I think getting a little bit more bold with the usage of with the usage of texture, kind of improve the scene, and I don't know, kind of ended up defining it. I mean, these dots are no insignificant part of the scene right here. They really play a pretty crucial role. Let's back up a little bit so you can kind of see the whole. Let's add a lot kind of around her so it's very clear where the stars are kind of emanating from. Kind of sparkles of light. Okay, so I have it, they're just more dense a certain area, and as it moves out, they're a little more spread apart, you know, which would kind of indicate this emanating aspect. Let's get a little bit of highlights in the folds of the drapery too. Maybe on her wing, maybe some a little bit of light. Let's see. Just for some variation, let's put a few clusters of some colorful flowers, wildflowers, for this bear to enjoy in the meadow. Spring is always so full of life. And landscapes. It's kind of subtle, but it's one of those details that, you know, does show up quite a bit when you look at it up close. Okay, you see those little clusters of orange. It's not completely equal, okay, and laid out everywhere. It's kind of clustered, and I think that looks more effective that way. Okay. I should stay zoomed in. I'll try to pay attention and not apply everything completely off screen here, but we need to get some of these little stars kind of glowing, I think. This effect. Yeah. Okay, too much ink. Alright. Alright, let me use my smash side. I was gonna. Okay. That. Okay, I'm getting close to wrapping this scene up here. Sorry these videos are going on so long. You give me the means by which to shoot a longer video, and that's what they become. These videos, sorry they become so long. Not doing them in segments has been good, but I don't know. YouTube lets me post longer than the 10-minute format, and you kind of take that and run with it. I guess I should edit some of these, but anyways, this is the process right here. I mean, you know, I'm not editing out something like that little, you know, that blotch down there. I mean, you know, where I re-stamp those trees or something like that, but anyways, I mean, those are the types of things that come up all the time, and you know, when you're shooting this just all in real time, you can kind of see a lot of the things that happen, you know, along the way, you know, in terms of trying to figure out the concept of a scene and just everything that kind of develops along the way. And I don't know, I guess that could be good to see. It happens with me all the time. The starfish scene that I was doing a few days ago, you know, for the longest time in there, and I wasn't quite sure of the direction that that was going to take, and kind of all came together kind of in the end, and just with some last minute touches. I can't tell you how many times this white pen really saves me, you know. I mean, I wouldn't say it saves me, I mean, it's an integral part of the technique for me, but you know, it can really enhance certain things, but it can also kind of subdue other things, you know, by having this texture in there. It really, you know, it's certainly a strength of the scene, but it kind of masks all the different weaknesses that I might, consider a weakness in the scene right here. Same with this pigment ink right here. I mean, the image itself, I think it's dynamic, but by bringing in these little dots and having this sparkling light kind of, you know, wrapped around the figure, I mean, it really adds a lot of content, visual interest and drama to her, and thus to the scene. Alright, I guess enough was enough, and show you what happens here. See all the little stars up there. She reaches down. See, even that little dot right there, you know, placed in the scene. And as the light kind of sprinkles down onto the landscape, and ends up as little clusters of flowers on the valley floor. Okay, half-page scene. Thanks as always for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and glad you made it through. Okay, thanks.